I gave my cousin $5,000 a week, but he didn't even tell me about the family holiday. He'll regret it. Family meant everything to me. That's what I was raised to believe anyway. I still remember the day Darren called me, his voice cracking with what I thought was genuine emotion. It was a dreary Tuesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of a video conference with my team when his name flashed across my phone screen. Darren never called during work hours. Something had to be wrong. "Alexa, I hate to do this," he said after I excused myself from the meeting, "but I'm about to lose everything." Darren explained how the tech company he'd worked at for 8 years had undergone a massive restructuring. His entire department gone. Just like that. No warning, no severance beyond the bare minimum required by law. His voice trembled as he described how he'd already fallen behind on his mortgage payments. "The kids' college funds are next," he whispered. "I never thought I'd be in this position, you know? 42 years old and looking at bankruptcy." I didn't hesitate. "How much do you need to stay afloat?" The silence that followed told me he hadn't expected that response. "Alexa, I can't ask you for money. I just needed someone to talk to." "Darren, we're family. Tell me what you need." After some back and forth, I convinced him to accept my help. $5,000 would cover his monthly mortgage and essential bills while he looked for another job. I transferred the money before we even hung up. "I'll pay you back every cent," he promised. "You have no idea what this means to me." What started as a one-time emergency bailout became a weekly arrangement. Each Monday, I'd transfer $5,000 to Darren's account. At first, he'd send lengthy, grateful texts about the interviews he was lining up and the promising leads he was pursuing. Those messages grew shorter over time, eventually becoming just a thumbs-up emoji acknowledging the transfer. I didn't mind. My e-commerce platform had taken off beyond my wildest dreams 3 years earlier, and I was making more money than I could reasonably spend. Why not help the cousin who'd always been more like a brother to me? Darren and I had grown up houses apart, spending every summer together at our grandparents' lake house, every Christmas morning opening presents side by side. "You were always the smart one," Darren would tell me at family gatherings, one arm wrapped around my shoulders. "I knew you'd make it big someday." He'd say it loud enough for everyone to hear, beaming with what I mistook for pride. 11 months into our arrangement, I'd given Darren approximately $220,000. I tracked it casually in my personal finance spreadsheet, not because I expected repayment, but because I liked seeing the concrete representation of how I was helping someone I cared about. The money meant little to me compared to the knowledge that I was supporting my family. My parents had died in a car accident when I was in college, leaving me with a modest inheritance that I'd invested in my first business venture. Darren had been there for the funeral, had helped me sort through their belongings, had invited me to every holiday dinner to ensure I wasn't alone. How could I not help him now that our situations were reversed? "You're too generous for your own good," my boyfriend David remarked one evening as we prepared dinner in my apartment. "Has Darren mentioned anything about finding work?" I chopped vegetables, with perhaps more force than necessary. "He's looking. The job market is tough." "For almost a year? In this economy?" He raised an eyebrow. "People are hiring everywhere." "Not for his specific skill set," I said, though I realized I couldn't actually articulate what Darren's specific skill set was. "Something in project management?" I never asked for details. David let it drop, but his question lingered in my mind. That night, I texted Darren, "How's the job search going? Anything I can do to help with connections?" His response came the next morning, getting close on a few opportunities. "Thanks for checking in, but I've got it covered. You're already doing more than enough, sis." That seemed reasonable. I pushed my fleeting doubts aside and continued our arrangement. Then came the Instagram notification that would crack the foundation of everything I believed about family loyalty. My phone pinged while I was at the gym, a casual alert that my Aunt Patricia had posted for the first time in weeks. I tapped on it absent-mindedly between sets, expecting to see her usual gardening photos or pictures of her Pomeranian. Instead, I saw a sprawling beach resort. Palm trees swaying in the background. Tropical drinks garnished with tiny umbrellas. And there, gathered around a massive seaside dinner table, was my entire extended family. My aunts and uncles from both sides. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Their spouses and children. And Darren, seated at the center of the table, raising a glass in what appeared to be a toast. I zoomed in, certain I was mistaken. But there was no mistake. The same Darren who had told me just 3 days earlier that he was too broke to even think about a vacation was clearly on vacation with every member of my family except me. I scrolled through the photo carousel with increasing disbelief. There were 23 pictures in all, documenting what appeared to be a week-long tropical getaway. Beach volleyball games, snorkeling excursions, sunset cruises. Everyone looked happy, relaxed, and completely unbothered by my absence. The caption read, "Finally got the whole family together for the reunion we've been planning for months. Perfect weather, perfect company. Hashtag family first, hashtag making memories." The whole family? I stared at the words until they blurred. I hadn't heard a whisper about any family reunion, let alone one that had apparently been in the planning stages for months. Not a single invitation. Not even a casual mention. And there was Darren, the cousin I'd been supporting financially for nearly a year, looking carefree in designer sunglasses that I recognized from a luxury brand's latest collection. The same cousin who had texted me yesterday asking if I could send this week's money a day early because he was running on fumes. My phone pinged again with another notification. An email confirmation of the $5,000 transfer that had just cleared to Darren's account. I sat down on the weight bench, suddenly feeling like someone had knocked the wind out of me. The gym continued to buzz with activity around me, but I barely noticed. A cold, hollow feeling spread through my chest as a question formed in my mind. What else didn't I know? I closed the Instagram app and set my phone face down on the bench. The gym suddenly felt too crowded, the music too loud. I needed space to think. Back in my apartment, I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet and opened my laptop. I navigated to Patricia's Facebook page, something I rarely checked, and found what I was looking for, an entire album titled Rodriguez Family Getaway 2023. Public. Visible to anyone, including me, the family member they'd conveniently forgotten to invite. The album contained over 200 photos, meticulously organized by day. From the timestamps, the trip had lasted 9 days at an exclusive resort in Bora Bora. Not just any resort, but the Royal Maitai Overwater Bungalow Resort, where rooms started at $1,200 per night. I knew this because I considered booking it for David's birthday last year. I clicked through the photos with mechanical precision, taking inventory. Uncle Robert and Aunt Lisa. Their daughters Megan and Jennifer with their husbands. Uncle David and Aunt Patricia. Their son Michael, his wife, and their twins. Cousin Emily, the youngest at 19, posing with a first legal drink sign. Grandma Rosa looking pleased in a wide-brimmed sun hat. And everywhere, in nearly every group shot, Darren. Darren parasailing. Darren leading a conga line at what appeared to be a private beach party. Darren hoisting Grandma Rosa onto his shoulders in the crystal-clear water. I noticed something else. In one photo, Darren was wearing an Apple Watch that looked remarkably like the latest Ultra model, released just last month. The same model I'd purchased for myself as a small reward after closing a major business deal. Mine had cost nearly $900. My phone buzzed. A text from Darren. "Thanks for sending the money early, sis. Lifesaver, as always." I stared at the message, a strange calm washing over me. I replied with a casual no problem. "Everything okay?" "All good. Just bills piling up, you know how it is." I set my phone down and returned to the photos. In one image, taken at what appeared to be a farewell dinner, a champagne bottle sat on the table. Not just any champagne, Dom Perignon vintage, easily $200 a bottle. I zoomed in on the receipt visible at the edge of the table. Darren's name was printed at the top, along with what appeared to be a room number. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened a new browser tab and looked up the resort's room rates. The overwater bungalows that appeared in the background of several photos started at $1,200 per night. For 9 nights, that would be nearly $11,000, not including food, drinks, or activities. 2 weeks of my financial support. The last photo in the album showed everyone at the airport, luggage piled around them, tanned and smiling. The caption read, "Until next year's reunion." Already counting down the days. Next year's reunion. So this was a planned annual event. I checked the upload date. 3 days ago. The trip must have concluded just before I'd spotted that first Instagram notification. Which meant that when Darren had texted me asking to send money early because he was running on fumes, he had just returned from a luxury vacation with my entire family. A vacation I hadn't even known was happening. I closed my laptop and paced my living room, questions swirling. Why hadn't anyone mentioned it to me? Not just Darren, but any of them? Had I somehow offended the entire extended family without realizing it? I picked up my phone and scrolled through recent communications. The last message from anyone other than Darren had been from Aunt Patricia 2 months ago, a generic happy birthday text. Before that, nothing for weeks. I hadn't thought much of it. I'd always been busy with work, and family communication tended to ebb and flow. Or so I'd believed. I called David, needing an outside perspective. "This doesn't make sense," he said after I explained what I'd found. "You've never mentioned any family drama. Why would they exclude you like this?" "I don't know," I said, the confusion evident in my voice. "Maybe they think I'm too caught up in my business to care about family vacations?" "A vacation is one thing," David replied, his tone hardening. "Not even telling you about it is another. And Darren, he's been taking your money while vacationing at luxury resorts? That's not just inconsiderate, Alexa. That's deliberate deception." Deep down, I knew he was right, but admitting it meant accepting that my relationship with my family, and especially with Darren, wasn't what I'd thought it was. "Maybe there's an explanation," I said, though the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. "There's one way to find out," David suggested. "Call your grandmother. She's always been straight with you." I hesitated. Grandma Rosa had raised me after my parents died. She wouldn't lie to me. Would she? I dialed her number, rehearsing casual questions in my head. The call went to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same result. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos, my family laughing, celebrating, bonding, all without me. And Darren at the center of it all, living large on my dime. Morning came with a decision. I needed more information before confronting anyone. Who could I trust? Who might tell me the truth? The answer came unexpectedly. My phone pinged with a text from Emily, my youngest cousin. "Hey Alexa, you around? Need some advice about starting an online business. Figured you're the expert." I stared at the message. Emily had always been impressionable, honest to a fault. She'd also been close to Darren, following him around like an adoring younger sister at family gatherings. But in those vacation photos, I'd noticed something. In group shots, Emily often stood slightly apart, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I texted back, "Sure, Em. Coffee tomorrow?" Her response came quickly, perfect. "Thanks. There's actually a lot I'd like to talk about." That ellipsis told me everything I needed to know. Emily had something to say, and I had a feeling it wasn't about business advice. The truth was finally within reach. I arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, claiming a corner table with high-backed chairs that would give us privacy. Emily had always been the family's wild card, brutally honest, immune to social pressure, and perpetually underestimated because of her age. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the teenager with purple hair and multiple piercings. At 19, Emily had transformed into a poised young woman in pre-med studies, though her eyes still held that characteristic sharpness. "You look great, Em," I said, standing to hug her. She returned the embrace stiffly. "Thanks for meeting me." Her voice was tight, controlled.
"I ordered online."
My usual. While I fetched her complicated cold brew concoction, Emily sat rigid in her chair, fingers drumming against her phone case. When I returned, she took a long sip before meeting my eyes. "So, business advice," I prompted, giving her the opening she'd requested. Emily's gaze darted around the cafe. "That's not why I'm here." I figured as much. She inhaled deeply. "I saw you looking at Aunt Patricia's vacation photos yesterday." The app shows who views them, you know. I nodded, waiting. I need to know if you're actually curious about what's going on, or if you just want confirmation that everything's fine so you can keep playing ATM to Darren. The bluntness was pure Emily. I want the truth, I said simply. She studied me for a moment, then reached for her phone. What I'm about to show you, it's going to hurt. I can handle it. Her thumbs flew across the screen. There's a family group chat. Has been for about 1.5 years now. I'm not in any family group chat. Exactly.
She turned her phone toward me.
That's the point. The screen showed a WhatsApp group titled Real Fam, No Alexa. The member list included every relative I had, including Grandma Rosa, whose contact photo showed her smiling next to Darren. My stomach clenched. Scroll, Emily instructed, releasing her phone to me. The earliest messages dated back 18 months. Innocuous at first, birthday reminders, recipe shares, memes. Then, gradually, mentions of me began to appear. Uncle Robert, Alexa just called to wish me happy birthday. Didn't even mention how she could invest my retirement this time. Progress. A string of laughing emojis followed. Aunt Patricia. Is she still doing that obnoxious thing where she pays for everything and acts like it's nothing? Cousin Jennifer. Last Christmas, she casually mentioned her company's valuation. We get it. Your rich face with rolling eyes. I looked up at Emily, bewildered. I've never done any of that. Keep scrolling, she said quietly. I did. The comments grew more pointed, more frequent. Screenshots of my social media posts with mocking commentary. Photos from family gatherings with analyses of my condescending expressions or show-off designer clothes. Clothes I'd chosen specifically because they looked ordinary. And then, around 11 months ago, Darren's presence in the chat intensified dramatically. Darren, guess who just agreed to loan me money? Ms. Moneybags herself. Called it a family support stipend, like she's some kind of benevolent queen faced with tears of joy. Aunt Lisa, how much? Darren, $5,000 to start. But I'm betting I can get it weekly. She's desperate to feel important. Darren, update, it worked. $5,000 every Monday, no questions asked. That's $20,000 a month for those keeping track, money mouth face. Uncle David, are you serious? That's insane. Darren, very serious. She wants to play savior so bad. Meanwhile, vacation fund equals sorted. My hands trembled as I continued scrolling. There were photos of purchases made with my money, Darren's new car, designer clothes, expensive electronics, all shared with gleeful captions about how clueless I was. Then came the vacation planning. Darren had pitched the idea, coordinated everything, and most sickeningly, offered to subsidize costs for family members who couldn't afford it. Darren, consider it Alexa's unintentional contribution to family bonding, winking face. Aunt Patricia, shouldn't we at least invite her? It feels wrong. Darren, trust me, she's too important for family vacations. Besides, she'd just make everyone feel bad about their bank accounts and jobs. This way, everyone can relax. What followed were weeks of detailed planning, all while deliberately keeping me in the dark. The final twist of the knife was a photo Darren had shared from the resort, a receipt for a round of cocktails for the entire family, captioned, "Another round courtesy of Cousin Clueless." If she only knew her emergency money was funding premium tequila shots, rolling on the floor laughing. I set the phone down, unable to look at more. Why are you showing me this? Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Because it's wrong. I went along with it at first. I was angry at you too.
But why?
What did I do? She looked genuinely surprised. You really don't know? After you made it big, you stopped showing up. Birthdays, holidays, everything became optional for you. When you did come, you were always on your phone, distracted. I started to protest, but memories flashed through my mind. Leaving Christmas dinner early for an investor call. Missing my godson's baptism because of a product launch. Perhaps I had become distant, though never intentionally. That doesn't justify this. I gestured at the phone. No, Emily agreed. It doesn't. What started as hurt feelings morphed into something ugly. Darren saw an opportunity and seized it. He's been playing both sides, convincing you that he needs help while convincing everyone else that you're an arrogant jerk who deserves to be taken advantage of. And they believe him. He's persuasive. Emily took her phone back. He made it seem like a victimless crime. You have so much money. Why would you even notice? I leaned back, processing everything. Does anyone else feel the way you do? She shook her head. I only started feeling uncomfortable on the trip. Watching Darren throw your money around while everyone laughed about it, it felt cruel. When I said something, they accused me of being dramatic. Why tell me now? Because they're planning something bigger. A family cruise next summer. 3 weeks. And Darren. She hesitated. Darren's been bragging that he's going to convince you to front a business opportunity soon. Something about needing startup capital. The cold feeling in my stomach spread. Just last week, Darren had casually mentioned an investment opportunity he wanted to discuss. Everyone thinks you're too absorbed in your own success to notice what's happening, Emily continued. Darren's convinced them you deserve it. Are you going to prove them right? I met her gaze steadily. For the first time in days, clarity replaced confusion. No, I said. I'm not. Emily nodded, satisfied. So what will you do? A plan was already forming in my mind. First, I need to see everything. Every message, every meme, every comment. Can you help me? Her response was to place her phone in my hand again. Screen record whatever you need. I'll grab us more coffee. As she walked away, I stared at the group chat's name. Real fam, no Alexa. My hands no longer trembled. In their place was a cold, focused resolve. They thought I was clueless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Monday morning came with the familiar ping of my banking app. Transfer to Darren Rodriguez complete. $5,000. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with his text. Thanks, sis. Lifesaver as always. I typed back. No problem. Hey, wanna grab lunch this week? Been a while since we caught up. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Pretty swamped with job applications. Rain check. Sure thing. Good luck with those applications. I set my phone down and turned to my laptop, where I'd organized all the evidence Emily had helped me collect into a detailed folder structure. Screenshots, screen recordings, bank statements, text exchanges. Everything meticulously cataloged and time-stamped. You're being remarkably calm about this, David observed from across my home office, where he was reviewing the material with me. If it were me, I'd be burning the world down. Fire's more effective when controlled, I replied, surprised by my own composure. The initial shock and hurt had crystallized into something harder, more focused. Besides, they think I'm oblivious. That gives me an advantage. For the next 2 weeks, I maintained the illusion perfectly. I continued sending Darren his weekly payments. I commented positively on family social media posts. I even called Grandma Rosa about a recipe, chatting amicably while she invented excuses for why she'd been too busy to return my earlier calls. Meanwhile, I worked methodically behind the scenes. First, I hired a financial forensics specialist to trace exactly where my money had gone. The results were illuminating. Darren had been transferring portions of my payments to various family members under the guise of loans and gifts, effectively buying goodwill with my money. Nearly $40,000 had funded the Bora Bora trip directly. Second, I consulted discreetly with a lawyer about my options. While what Darren had done wasn't technically illegal, I had given him the money freely. After all, there were potential avenues for civil action based on fraudulent misrepresentation. Do you want to sue your family? The lawyer had asked, eyebrows raised. No, I'd replied. I want leverage. The third phase of my plan required precision timing. Emily had mentioned that Grandma Rose's 80th birthday celebration was scheduled for the last weekend of the month, a milestone event that everyone would attend. Darren was coordinating naturally. I texted him. Just realized Grandma's birthday is coming up. Anything planned? His response came hours later, just a small family dinner at her place. Nothing fancy. She's not feeling up to a big celebration this year. I checked the group chat screenshots Emily had sent me that morning. Darren had just confirmed the reservation at Le Chateau, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, for 20 people. A custom birthday cake had been ordered. A photographer hired. All paid for with my latest emergency payment. That's too bad, I texted back. Let me know if there's anything I can do. Will do, sis. Thanks for checking in. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Uncle Robert. We exchanged pleasantries before he awkwardly mentioned Grandma's birthday. Darren mentioned you might be too busy with work to join us, he said, guilt evident in his voice. Perhaps Emily's disapproval was spreading. Did he? I kept my tone neutral. Actually, I've cleared my schedule. Wouldn't miss it for the world. A pause. Great. That's great. I'll let everyone know. I smiled as I hung up. The pieces were falling into place. The day before the dinner, I made two crucial preparations. First, I booked the restaurant's private media room adjacent to the main dining area, at considerable expense, and arranged for the technical setup I would need. Second, I composed and scheduled an email to Darren with a subject line he wouldn't be able to resist. Emergency business opportunity, time sensitive. The email contained a convincing proposal for a startup investment, exactly the kind of thing Emily had warned me about. The attachment was labeled funding_commitment PDF, but was actually an empty document. The real purpose was the tracking pixel embedded in the email that would alert me when he opened it. Saturday evening arrived. I dressed meticulously in a tailored emerald dress that projected success without ostentation, paired with subtle gold jewelry. As I applied my lipstick, David appeared in the bedroom doorway. Are you sure you want to do this alone? He asked. This is between me and my family, I replied. Besides, you'll get to hear all about it afterward. He nodded, understanding. Just remember, whatever happens tonight, you've already won. You know the truth now. It's not about winning, I said, though part of me knew that wasn't entirely true. It's about consequences. I arrived at Le Chateau precisely 30 minutes after the reservation time. Through the restaurant's glass doors, I could see them all already seated at a long table in the main dining room. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed. Darren sat at the head of the table beside Grandma Rosa, holding court like a benevolent king. My phone pinged. The tracking alert. Darren had just opened my email, right there at the dinner table. I watched through the glass as his expression brightened, excitement barely contained as he scanned what he thought was my commitment to fund his fictitious business venture. The hostess approached me. Ms. Rodriguez? The media room is ready and the main party has been seated. Thank you. I handed her a generous tip. Remember, wait for my signal before bringing it in. I took a deep breath, centering myself. In my clutch were printouts of bank statements, screenshots of the group chat, and a USB drive containing everything else. The restaurant's projector was already set up in the private room, ready to display it all at my command. For a moment, doubt crept in. These were the people who had shaped my childhood, who had supported me after my parents died. Was this too harsh a response to their betrayal? Then I remembered Darren's message to the group. Consider it Alexa's unintentional contribution to family bonding. The doubt vanished. I straightened my shoulders and pushed through the restaurant doors, my face a mask of pleasant surprise, as if I'd just happened to discover them there. 20 heads turned simultaneously as I approached the table. Alexa, Grandma Rosa exclaimed, her shock poorly disguised as delight. What a wonderful surprise. Darren's smile froze, his phone still in his hand displaying my email.
Sis, I was just about to call you.
Thought you were busy tonight. I returned his smile, with equal insincerity. I wouldn't miss Grandma's birthday for anything. Mind if I join? I'd like to make a toast. The fire was lit, and I was about to watch it all burn. A waiter hurriedly brought an extra chair, wedging it between Uncle David and Aunt Lisa, who shifted uncomfortably to accommodate me. The table had clearly been arranged with precise planning, placed cards, personalized menus, party favors, with no contingency for an unexpected guest. To Grandma Rosa, I said, raising my hastily provided champagne flute once I was seated. 80 years of wisdom, strength, and family values. You taught us all what matters most. I emphasized that last part just enough to make Darren's smile falter. Thank you, Alexa, Grandma said, touching her heart. Her eyes darted nervously between Darren and me. Such a wonderful surprise to have you here. Isn't it? I smiled. Almost as surprising as finding out about the Bora Bora trip through Instagram. The table went silent. Forks paused midway to mouths. Someone choked slightly on their champagne. Oh, that. Uncle Robert waved dismissively. Last-minute thing. Very rushed. We assumed you'd be too busy with my business? I finished for him. Funny, the photos suggested months of planning. The matching t-shirts with Rodriguez Family Vacation 2023 certainly required advanced coordination. No one met my eyes except Emily, who watched from the far end of the table with a mixture of apprehension and approval. Darren jumped in, voice smooth as silk. Look, we should have mentioned it. That's on me. But honestly, sis, every time we invite you to family stuff, you're too swamped with work. Several heads nodded in agreement. Interesting perspective. I reached for my clutch. Since we're all together, would you mind if I share something with Grandma for her birthday? A family story, you could say. Before anyone could object, I signaled the hostess, who nodded to a waiter standing by the entrance of the private media room. He discreetly rolled out a cart with the projector and screen I'd arranged earlier. What's this? Darren's voice had lost its easy confidence. Just a little presentation. I connected my laptop while the waiter positioned the screen where everyone could see it. I call it the Family Treasury, a year in transactions. The first slide appeared, a simple spreadsheet showing weekly $5,000 transfers to Darren, totaling $220,000 over 11 months. As you all know, I've been helping Darren through a tough time after his job loss. I clicked to the next slide, which showed Darren's social media posts during the same period. Expensive restaurants, new electronics, designer clothes. A very tough time indeed. Darren's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. Alexa, this isn't the place. Oh, but it is, I interrupted, voice still pleasant. Families should be transparent with each other, right? Especially about how we spend family money. The next slide showed transfers from Darren's account to various family members present at the table. Each transaction was highlighted in yellow, with dates and amounts clearly visible. Now, I found this pattern curious. I continued, motioning to the screen. Aunt Patricia, that $2,000 deposit labeled Florida Fund came just 2 days after I sent Darren his weekly support. Uncle David, same with your roof repair payment. And Cousin Jennifer, your wedding planner deposit seems to have been funded directly from my assistance to Darren. The room had gone deathly quiet. Even the waitstaff had retreated, sensing the tension. This could all be coincidence, of course. I clicked to the next slide, but then I saw this. On screen appeared screenshots from the Real Fam No Alexa group chat. The most damning messages displayed in high resolution. Darren bragging about manipulating me, family members laughing about my cluelessness, plans to exclude me from gatherings while spending my money. Gasps and mutters rippled through the group. Grandma Rose's hand went to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Or perhaps just dismay at being caught. Alexa, this is completely out of context. Darren stood, reaching for the laptop. These are jokes, sis. Dark humor. You weren't meant to see. Exactly. I cut him off, my voice hardening slightly. I wasn't meant to see any of it. Just like I wasn't meant to see these. The next slide showed the Bora Bora receipts, all charged to Darren's credit card within days of receiving my payments. The luxury bungalows, the champagne toasts, the private excursions. You funded the entire family vacation with my money, I stated flatly, while telling me you were too broke to travel. Someone, I think it was Aunt Lisa, began to cry softly. And this, I clicked to a final slide showing Darren's email draft to me about a fictional business opportunity extracted from Emily's screenshots. The attached note from Darren to the group read, going to hit her up for a business investment next. Thinking $50K to start. Who's in for Maui 2024? I closed the laptop and gazed around the table. I've been supporting Darren with $5,000 every week because family helps family through hard times. That's what I believed. What I didn't realize was that I was actually funding a systematic deception orchestrated by the person I trusted most. Darren had sunk back into his chair, all pretense gone. It wasn't like that. You have so much money, you wouldn't even miss it. That was never your decision to make. I turned to address the entire table. I built my business from nothing after Mom and Dad died. Some of you helped me then, and I've never forgotten that. When I thought one of you needed help, I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I just gave because that's what family means to me. Grandma Rosa had tears streaming down her face now. Alexa, we didn't know. Didn't know what? That Darren was lying about his financial situation? Or that he was using my money to buy your loyalty against me? No one answered. I stood, smoothing my dress. I came here tonight for clarity, not revenge. Now I have it. So, let me leave you with 2 announcements. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. First, I've spoken with my financial advisor. Darren's weekly payments have been permanently terminated, effective immediately. Darren's face crumpled. This wasn't part of his script. Second, I continued, I've established a trust for Grandma Rosa's ongoing care and well-being that cannot be accessed by anyone else. The rest of you will need to fund your own vacations from now on. I picked up my clutch and nodded to the birthday girl. Happy birthday, Grandma. I've already taken care of the bill for tonight. Consider it my last contribution to family entertainment. As I turned to leave, Emily stood up from her seat. Without a word, she walked over and joined me, positioning herself firmly by my side. Emily, Aunt Patricia gasped. What are you doing? Emily looked at her mother coolly. Choosing a different kind of family. We walked out together, leaving behind a table of stunned relatives and shattered pretenses. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see Darren with his head in his hands while others gestured frantically. The carefully constructed facade of family unity completely disintegrated. The valet brought my car around. As Emily and I got in, she asked quietly, "Do you think they'll ever understand what they did wrong?" I looked back at the restaurant one last time. Honestly, I don't care anymore. And for the first time in weeks, I realized it was true. 3 months passed like a cleansing breeze. I threw myself into expanding my business, launching 2 new product lines and hiring 15 additional employees. Work that had once felt like an obligation now became a sanctuary, a place where merit and honesty actually mattered. Emily moved into my guest house temporarily while she sorted out her living situation. She'd had a spectacular falling out with her parents after siding with me at the restaurant, resulting in them threatening to pull her tuition funding. I quietly arranged a scholarship through my company's foundation that would cover the remainder of her education, no strings attached. "You didn't have to do that," she told me when she found out. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes it different." The family implosion made for fascinating viewing from a distance. Through mutual acquaintances and social media, I learned that alliances had shifted dramatically after my revelation. The first domino to fall was Uncle Robert, who called me a week after Grandma's birthday dinner. He left a rambling voicemail, equal parts apology and justification. "We never meant to hurt you," he insisted. "Darren convinced us you wouldn't care about the money, that you had so much, it was meaningless to you." I never called him back. Aunt Patricia tried next, with a carefully worded email explaining how Darren had manipulated everyone's perceptions with selective information about me. She claimed he'd shown edited screenshots of texts where I supposedly bragged about my wealth or made dismissive comments about family gatherings. I forwarded the email to Emily, who replied with a single sentence, "Funny how they only realized they were manipulated after the money stopped." The most surprising development came from Grandma Rosa. She sent a handwritten letter, 8 pages of elegant cursive expressing genuine remorse. She acknowledged allowing herself to believe the worst about me because it was easier than confronting Darren, who had become the family's charismatic center. "I let jealousy cloud my judgment," she wrote. "Your success reminded me of all the opportunities your father, my son, never had. Instead of celebrating that his child achieved what he couldn't, I resented it. I can only ask for your forgiveness, though I don't expect it." I read her letter several times before placing it in my desk drawer, neither rejecting nor accepting her apology. Some wounds needed time before I could determine if they would ever fully heal. Meanwhile, Darren's carefully constructed world crumbled spectacularly. His first reality check came when he applied for an actual job and discovered his employment gap and lack of recent references posed significant problems. Apparently, managed family investments didn't impress potential employers, especially without a portfolio to show for it. 3 weeks after the confrontation, he listed his luxury car for sale at a steep discount. A month later, he moved out of his upscale apartment into a modest studio on the other side of town. His designer clothes began appearing on secondhand websites. The cousin who had once held court at family gatherings was now noticeably absent from social media. No more vacation photos. No more expensive restaurant check-ins. The silence spoke volumes. Word reached me through Emily that Darren had attempted to pitch his business opportunity to other relatives, seeking alternative funding sources. He'd been met with cold rejection. The family trust was irreparably broken. He's working at a call center now, Emily informed me during one of our weekly dinners. Aunt Lisa saw him at the grocery store buying ramen noodles and store-brand cereal. I nodded, surprised by my lack of satisfaction at his downfall. How does that make you feel? She considered the question carefully.
Sad.
Not for him specifically, but for what all this represents. A family that turned on itself because of greed and jealousy. Her wisdom at 19 continually impressed me. 6 months after the confrontation, my lawyer called with an unexpected update. Darren had requested a meeting. I wouldn't recommend it, she advised. Nothing legally requires you to engage. But curiosity won out. I agreed to a brief meeting at my office with my lawyer present. Darren arrived looking nothing like the confident manipulator I remembered. His designer clothes had been replaced by warehouse store basics. The expensive watch was gone. Even his trademark perfect haircut had been swapped for a simple home trim. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. I nodded but said nothing. "I came to give you this." He placed a check on my desk for $12,500, clearly all he could scrape together. "It's a start. I'll pay back every cent, even if it takes years." "Why bother?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You clearly didn't think you were doing anything wrong before." He flinched as if I'd struck him. "I told myself that story for a long time, that you owed the family somehow, that your success came at our expense, that taking your money was just rebalancing things. And now I know I was just jealous and weak." He finally met my eyes. "You built something real. I just played pretend with your money." I studied him for a long moment, trying to detect any hint of the old manipulation. Finding none, I pushed the check back toward him.
"Keep it.
Use it to build something real of your own." Surprise flickered across his face. "I don't deserve your help." "It's not help," I clarified. "It's a challenge. Prove you can actually create value instead of just transferring it from others." After he left, my lawyer raised an eyebrow. That was generous. "No," I corrected her. "It was final." In the year that followed, my company's valuation doubled. I scaled back my working hours to pursue other interests: travel, education, philanthropy. I funded a scholarship program for entrepreneurship students from low-income backgrounds. I bought a lakeside property reminiscent of my grandparents' house where Darren and I had spent those childhood summers. My circle had indeed grown smaller, but infinitely stronger. Emily graduated with honors and joined my company as a product developer. David and I got engaged. I maintained minimal contact with Grandma Rosa, our relationship healing slowly through careful, honest communication. As for Darren, I heard through Emily that he'd used that final $12,500 to take coding classes and start a modest web development business. He'd stopped talking about get-rich-quick schemes and luxury purchases. Whether this change would last remained to be seen, but it wasn't my responsibility either way. Sometimes late at night, I still found myself scrolling through those old group chat screenshots, marveling at how people who claimed to love me had justified their betrayal so easily. The hurt had faded, replaced by something more valuable: clarity about who belonged in my life and why. Family isn't just about shared blood or childhood memories. It's about mutual respect, honesty, and genuine support, not the carefully disguised exploitation I'd experienced. I no longer funded the circus of false familial loyalty, and in doing so, I found what I truly needed: authenticity in every relationship I chose to maintain. That lesson alone was worth every penny of the $220,000 I'd lost. Some educations are expensive, but their value lasts a lifetime.